It has been nearly 4 years since Season 1 of Arcane, and till this day, Silco is not only still my favorite character from Arcane, but just one of my favorite characters in all of media. And over the last 6 to 8 months, I have made a lot of videos on this character. I have talked about him a lot, and my opinions and feelings on him keep changing. And right now, where I stand with this character is I think in many ways he was a necessary evil for the world of Arcane. The first thing that is very crucial to understanding Silco as a character is understanding where he comes from and his backstory. Silco is from Zaun, the undercity of Piltover, and his entire life he has been breathing in polluted air, drinking polluted water, eating terrible food, and constantly living in the literal shadow of the very flourishing and beautiful Piltover. Now, throughout Silco's life, he's watched a bunch of his friends, a bunch of his family members die or face immense suffering at the hands of the oppression from Piltover. So what does he do? Him and his best friend Vander lead a revolution against Piltover. They start a war, there is a huge fight, there is constant carnage happening all throughout Zaun, and what ends up happening? More of his friends and family members are killed, and then, assuming this is something you kind of have to assume since it's not in the first 2 seasons of the TV show, after the death of Vander and Silco's best friend, they have a disagreement on how to continue, and they end up fighting nearly to the death. And in this fight, Silco takes a bad gash to the eye, nearly drowns in this toxic river, and feels that he has been reborn as a new person after this moment. And here is where the story and the bulk of this video comes into play. I personally do not believe that Silco is a constantly morally good person. He does a lot of really bad things, his motivations can sometimes seem very evil, his relationship with Jinx is very, very toxic and very, very complicated, but at the end of the day, I believe he had the right intentions when he started his journey of trying to free Zaun, and not only that, it actually ends up working out in the end, at the end of Season 1, and kind of at the end of Season 2, even though they jumped ship entirely when it comes to the politics in Arcane. So let me explain. In Season 1, Episode 3, titled The Base Violence Necessary for Change, Silco tells something to Vander and to the audience, that because of this oppression, because of the constant abuse of power and just abuse of the Zaunite people, there is nothing that the people of Zaun can do to break free from this unless they do something so controversial, so violent, so outlandish that Piltover is forced to recognize them and change will be forced to happen. That at the end of the day, what Vander is doing is just appeasing a toxic system. Vander will not gain any ground for Zaun by keeping the peace. There needs to be a base violence necessary for change to occur. That way the future generations of Zaun can be free and live a better life than they did. And this is where Vander and Silco's whole disagreement occurs, because Silco thinks they need to double down, get more violent, get more radical, and Vander just kind of wants things to stay where they are so that no more innocent people die. But here's the thing. I truly believe that Silco kind of had the right idea here, because as it stands right now, and some of the information that we found out in Season 2 of Arcane, things for Zaun were only going to be getting worse. With the introduction of Hextech that was being politically maneuvered by Piltover, there was no way that Zaun was ever going to actually get any of the benefits that Jace wanted them to have. So what was this really going to do? This is going to create an even greater power dynamic and power difference between Piltover and Zaun. So if Hextech is allowed to flourish in Piltover, Zaun effectively has no chance of ever becoming a free state and having a better life for their people. Silco, now understanding the immense power difference between himself and Piltover, comes to the conclusion that he must create something of his own making that, while will never truly match the power of Piltover, will be just enough to annoy them, to make a difference, to put up some form of a fight. And that's why he funds and produces the production of Shimmer. Even though he knows that Shimmer is a highly addictive drug that will harm people of Zaun if they end up taking it, he understands that this is a necessary evil in order to even the playing field somewhat with Piltover. Now, it is very important to understand that Silco was not being completely altruistic in the creation of Shimmer. There was definitely some innate power that he wanted to have. That's why we have this really terrible, interesting scene where at the bottom of Zaun, he is feeding these people Shimmer, and he's like a god to them. They are his slaves, just waiting for their drug. That is a perfect moment of showing that while Silco might have had the right ambitions and dreams at the start, he has gotten corrupted by his dream in many different ways. But with that being said, the production of Shimmer, him fighting back against Piltover, it all in order to achieve the goal of freeing Zaun, does end up working. As we see at the end of Season 1, Episode 8, when Silco and Jace meet for the first time, they are discussing peace terms. I don't see enough people that talk about Arcane mentioning this, but at the end of Arcane Season 1, Silco is successful in getting Zaun to be a free nation. It's all right there. Jace basically says, yeah, you can have everything you want. You can be a free nation. We're not going to be fighting anymore. We're not going to be corrupting your airways or your waterways. You're free to do as you will. All we need is one person. And that's a pretty fair trade if you're just looking at this from an objective mindset. But the reason Silco doesn't go through with it is because he has this attachment to Jinx, which is a video in and of itself. But my point still stands. Silco succeeded. He won Zaun its freedom. Everything was right there in the palm of his hands, and while he wasn't a perfect person all throughout his journey, his goal of creating a base violence necessary for change, that way the next generations can live better off than he and Vander did, works. If this deal went through, there's a good potential that Zaun could have been a happier place. It wouldn't have been perfect, and it would have taken decades for Zaun to truly become a flourishing population in and of itself, but at the end of the day, it was hope. It was a sign that things could get better instead of only potentially getting worse. And even though I have a lot of problems with Arcane Season 2, specifically in the way they ditched this whole plotline of Zaun trying to win its independence, specifically in the way that Silco affected the people of Zaun, I see him as a necessary evil. So at the end of Season 2, we get one annoying scene of Savika in a council room with the people of Piltover, and it's implying that she is now going to have a say in the decisions that are made for Piltover and Zaun, and for the most part, Zaun is going to be getting more representation in the council and in decision making. Again, problematic in and of itself, but the point still stands. At the end of the day, Silco got someone from Zaun, someone like him, someone that looked up to him in the room where everything's going down, in the room where it happens. So there were many necessary dominoes that needed to fall, even if that fall was painful, in order for Zaun and the future children of Zaun to potentially have a better life, or at least a better life than Silco and Vander received. And at the end of the day, even though Silco is a main antagonist of Arcane, even though he is not a good person through and through, even though he does a lot of really horrible things, he was a necessary evil for the future of Zaun. And that is why he is still my favorite character in all of Arcane. He is so unbelievably complex because I understand and sympathize and even agree with some of the ways that he thinks and some of his goals, but at the end of the day, because he became so jaded by his own ambition, he became a rotten person in many different ways. And that is just unbelievable character work, and I'm truly sad we didn't get more of this from other characters in Arcane Season 2. But yeah, with all that being said, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below what you thought, and hope to catch you in the next one. Peace.